My name is Elia. I am an orphan, the last of a shamed bloodline. I am worthless. Tonight, my own pack, the people I grew up with, publicly rejected me. They dragged me in chains to the border. I am the payment for a blood debt my father died for. I am a sacrifice given to our sworn enemy, the ruthless Alpha Kaelen, the man whose brother my father killed. I am expecting a quick, brutal death. But Kaelen is a man with a dark secret. He is dying. An ancient curse is draining his life force. His healers say he will not survive the next full moon, which is just 1 month away. He looks at me, the last of my father's bloodline, and realizes I am the only one who can save him. I am the key to a desperate, ancient ritual. He doesn't kill me. He drags me to his throne room and binds my wrist to his with a silver, magical chain. He performs the ritual, and I feel my life force being ripped from my body to save his. He has survived, but I am now his prisoner, his unwilling lifeline, chained to the monster I despise. And I can already feel the terrible repercussion. I am getting weaker. I am chained to the man who is slowly draining my life away. Chapter 1: The Stray. My name is Elia. In the Red River Pack, I am less than a ghost. I am a walking, breathing symbol of shame. I live in a tiny, broken cabin near the edge of our territory. It is a place of mud and cold wind. My only neighbor is the dark, silent forest. The other pack members do not speak to me. They do not even look at me. When I walk through the village for scraps, they turn their heads, as if seeing me might bring them bad luck. It was not always this way. 12 years ago, I had a family. My father was the pack's beta. He was strong and proud and kind. But he made a mistake. During a border skirmish, his error led to the death of the neighboring Alpha's son. Our packs, Red River and Blackwood, were already sworn rivals. This act, this blood debt, almost started a war. To save our pack, my father took the blame. He was executed by our own Alpha. My mother died soon after, her heart broken, and I, his only child, was cast out. I was stripped of my name, my rank, and my future. I became Elia, the Stray. I have survived this way for 12 years. I survive by being invisible, by expecting nothing, by reminding myself that I am worthless. I endure the cold winters, the hunger, and the scorn of my pack. I am used to the loneliness. But tonight, the loneliness feels different. It feels colder. A strange, nervous energy is buzzing through the pack village. High-ranking warriors are gathering at the Alpha's lodge. They look tense. They look afraid. I hide in the shadows, watching, and a deep, cold dread settles in my stomach. Something is wrong. And I know, with a terrible, sick feeling, that when something goes wrong in this pack, the blame always falls on me.
Chapter 2: The Payment. The Alpha's guards found me just after moonrise. They did not knock. They kicked open the rotting door of my cabin. 2 large warriors grabbed my arms, their grips like iron. "What is this? What did I do?" I cried, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Silence, Stray," one of them snarled. He threw a rough, heavy chain at my feet. "Put these on." "Chains?" I whispered, my blood running cold. "Why?" "Alpha's orders. The Blackwood pack is at the border. They are demanding payment for the blood debt." My breath left me. The blood debt? My father's mistake. But my father is dead. The debt was paid. The guard laughed, a cruel, harsh sound. "They do not think so. Their new Alpha, Kaelen, is ruthless. He says his pack is still weakened by the loss of their heir." He yanked me to my feet. Our Alpha has agreed to his terms. He is offering a new payment. He is offering you. I could not speak. I could not breathe. My own pack, the people I had tried to be invisible to, were sacrificing me. They were giving me to our sworn enemies. I was dragged through the forest, the silver-mixed chains burning cold on my wrists. We reached the border clearing. My entire pack was there, their faces pale in the moonlight. On the other side stood a dozen massive dark-furred warriors, the Blackwood pack. They looked like shadows, their eyes glowing with hatred. My Alpha, a man I had known my whole life, stood forward. He looked afraid. He did not look at me. He looked at the shadows. "Alpha Kaelen," he called out, his voice trembling. "We honor the debt. We offer this stray, the last of the traitor's bloodline. Take her. Let there be pace between us." My Alpha shoved me forward. I stumbled and fell to my knees in the dirt between the two packs. The chains clinked, a heavy, final sound. My pack turned their backs on me. They rejected me. They left me alone, a living sacrifice given to the monsters in the dark.
Chapter 3, The Blackwood Fortress. The Blackwood warriors did not speak. They seized my chains and pulled me to my feet. I was dragged across the border, away from the only home I had ever known. No one from my pack looked back. I was truly, utterly alone. The journey was a long, silent nightmare. The Blackwood warriors were huge, their presence heavy and menacing. They hated me. I could feel it. I was the daughter of the man who had killed their prince. My existence was an insult to them. I kept my head down, my body shaking, expecting a knife in my back at any moment. After what felt like hours, we arrived at the fortress. It was a place of black stone and ice, built high on a dark, windy mountain. It looked like a scar against the sky. It was a place of power, with no warmth at all. I was dragged inside, my feet numb on the cold stone floors. The fortress was dark, lit only by a few torches. The air smelled of old iron, cold, and a deep animal musk. Wolves in dark armor watched me as I was pulled through the halls. Their eyes were cold, filled with pure, undisguised hatred. I was thrown into the great hall. It was a vast, cold cavern of a room. A massive, empty throne, carved from black rock, sat on a high platform. "The Alpha will see you now," one of the guards snarled. "He will decide your fate." I was forced to my knees in the center of the cold floor. The hall began to fill with Blackwood wolves. They circled me, silent and menacing. They looked at me like I was a piece of meat. Then a woman's voice cut through the silence. "So this is it? This is the payment? A half-starved stray?" I looked up. An old, stern she-wolf was walking toward me. She was dressed in fine dark furs. Her face was a mask of grief and cold anger. This was Lady Seraphina, Kaelen's aunt, the pack's matriarch. She stopped in front of me and looked down, her eyes filled with venom. 12 years we have waited for justice from my nephew, and they send us this, a pathetic, broken girl. You are a disgrace to your bloodline." She raised her hand to strike me. I flinched, squeezing my eyes shut, waiting for the blow. But the blow never came. Enough. The word was not loud. It was a low, rough growl, but it echoed through the hall with the power of a winter storm. Every wolf, including Seraphina, froze. A tall figure stepped out of the shadows. It was Alpha Kaelen.
Chapter 4. The Dying King. I dared to open my eyes. Alpha Kaelen stood on the platform, his hand raised. He was tall, scarred, and powerful. He looked like a king from an old, dark legend. But as he stepped into the torchlight, I saw something that shocked me more than his power. He was sick. His face was pale, his skin stretched tight over his sharp cheekbones. His eyes, though fierce, were sunken, shadowed by a deep, unnatural exhaustion. A faint tremor ran through his hand as he lowered it. He was a great alpha, the picture of strength, but he was also dying. Lady Seraphina turned to him, her anger gone, replaced by a deep worry. "Kaelen," she said, her voice softening, "you should be in your chambers. The healer said you must rest." "I will rest when justice is done," Kaelen said, his voice a low growl. He walked slowly down the steps, each movement seeming to cost him. He stopped in front of me. He looked down, his eyes scanning every part of me. I was the daughter of his enemy. He hated me. I could feel it. "Healers," he called out, "is it true? Is she the one?" The pack's healers, who had been hiding in the crowd, hurried forward. They looked at me, then at Kaelen, their faces pale with fear. "Yes, Alpha," the head healer whispered. "Our scouts confirmed it. She is the last of Silas's bloodline. She is the criteria." I looked up, confused. Criteria? What did that mean? Kaelen's gaze was fixed on me, his eyes burning with a new, strange light. It was not just hatred. It was desperation. "For 12 years, he said, his voice loud enough for the whole hall to hear, "I have been dying. The blood debt my rival owed was not just a political one. It was a curse that drains my life force." He coughed, a deep, harsh sound that shook his body. "The healer said I would not survive the next full moon. It is 1 month from now." He knelt in front of me, his cold, intense eyes locked with mine. "The curse was triggered by your father's blood, and the ancient law says it can only be stopped by your father's blood. You, Elia, are the only one who can save me. You are the only key."
Chapter 5. The Criteria. I stared at him, my mind reeling. A curse. A dying king. I was the key? I don't understand. I whispered, my voice shaking. "You want my blood? You want to kill me?" A dark, humorless smile touched his lips. "Death would be too simple, Stray. If you die, the debt remains unpaid. The curse remains." He stood up, his body unsteady. He looked tired, so tired. "The ritual is ancient," he said. "It has not been tried in 1,000 years. It is a fusion bond. It will not take your life. It will tether your life to mine." My blood ran cold. "Tether," he said. "You will save me," he said, his voice flat. "You will share your life force with me, you will stop the curse from killing me, and in return, you will share my fate." "No," I breathed, shaking my head. "No, I won't. I will not be your battery. I will not be chained to you." His aunt, Lady Seraphina, stepped forward, her face a mask of rage. "You will, you worthless girl. You will save your Alpha, or you will die for your father's crimes. You have no choice." "She is right," Kaelen said, his voice quiet, but more final than any shout. "You have no choice. You are the payment for the debt." He nodded to his guards. They seized my arms, their grips like iron, and hauled me to my feet. They dragged me from the great hall, up a dark, winding staircase. I fought, I kicked, but I was weak, and they were strong. They threw me into a dark chamber. It was a stone room, lit by a single high window. In the center of the floor was a circle, carved into the stone and painted with dark, dried blood. Kaelen was already there, waiting. He said, "You will do this, or you will watch my pack destroy your old home, your old Alpha, and everyone you have ever known. Your life for theirs."
He was giving me a choice, but it was not a choice at all. I was trapped. "Bring the chains," Kaelen commanded. His guards forced me to my knees inside the circle. Kaelen knelt opposite me. He held a thick silver chain and chanted with glowing ancient runes. He locked one cuff around his own wrist, then he reached across the circle and locked the other cuff around mine. "The ritual is begun," he whispered, his eyes blazing with a desperate, triumphant light. I felt a cold, draining pull, as if a plug had been pulled from my very soul. My life force was being ripped from my body, and the last thing I saw before I passed out was Kaelen's pale face gaining color, his eyes burning bright.
Chapter 6. The Fusion Bond. I awoke to a cold, searing pain in my wrist. I was still in the dark ritual room. Alpha Kaelen was kneeling opposite me, his face pale and slick with sweat in the dim, flickering candlelight. The heavy silver rune chain was now complete. One cup was locked around his wrist, and the other was locked around mine. We were tethered, with only a few feet of chain between us. What did you do?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. My entire body felt strange, weak, drained. "It is done," he rasped, his voice rough. He looked exhausted, but his eyes held a new, fierce light. "The fusion bond. It is the only way to settle the blood debt and save my life." You're taking my life," I accused, pulling weakly against the chain. The silver runes burned my skin at the movement. "I am sharing it," he corrected, his voice hard. "Your bloodline cursed me, girl. Your father's mistake is why my life force is fading. My healer said I would not live to see the next full moon. This ritual, it stops the drain. It balances the debt." I stared at him, the horrifying truth settling in. He wasn't just my jailer. He was a parasite. He was using my life to feed his own. "You've doomed me," I said, tears of pure, helpless rage filling my eyes. "You've chained me to a dying man." "No," Kaelen said, his voice quiet but triumphant. He closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, the deep, deathly exhaustion in their depths was less. A faint touch of color had returned to his face. A faint touch of color had returned to his face. He stood up, pulling the chain taut. I was yanked to my feet, my weak legs stumbling. The bond wasn't just magical, it was physical. He was going to drag me with him like an animal on a leash. "You are my lifeline, Elia," he whispered, his face close to mine. I could feel the hatred rolling off him, a cold, dark wave. He despised me, the daughter of his enemy, but he needed me. "You will stay by my side. You will be my shadow, and you will keep me alive." He turned and strode toward the door, pulling me with him. I had no choice but to follow, chained to the monster who had just stolen my life to save his own.
Chapter 7. The Repercussion. My new life was a prison, and the jailer was chained to my wrist. Kaelen did not lock me in a cell. He didn't need to. The magical chain of the fusion bond was absolute. He took me to his private, royal chambers, a vast, cold room of stone and dark furs, and chained my end of the bond to a thick iron ring on his heavy bedpost. He was free to move around the room. I was not. I could only move about 6 feet from the bed. Lady Seraphina, his aunt, came in. Her eyes, filled with grief and hatred, raked over me. "It is done then," she said, her voice like ice. "It is," Kaelen replied. He was sitting by the fire, looking stronger than he had in the great hall. "She will be the death of you, Kaelen," Seraphina hissed. To bind yourself to a traitor's spawn, it is an insult to your brother's memory. It is the law, Kaelen growled. She is the criteria. She is the only thing that could stop the curse. Seraphina looked at me with pure disgust. And what of the repercussion? Have you told her? I looked up. Repercussion? Kaelen's jaw tightened. The bond is new. It is unbalanced. My life force is healing, taking what it needs from a new source. He looked at me, his eyes cold. You are the new source. What does that mean? I asked, though a cold dread was already creeping over me. Seraphina smiled, a cruel, thin smile. It means that your body now works for two, girl. The king is a dying alpha. He requires a great deal of energy he will now pull from you. You will feel the cost. You are his life source now. You will be weak. You will be tired. The healers say you will need to rest at least 10 hours a day, perhaps more, just to survive.
Chapter 8. The Hated Lifeline. The next few days were a blur of weakness and deep, bone-numbing exhaustion. Lady Seraphina was right. The repercussion was a terrible, crushing weight. I slept for 10, 12, sometimes 14 hours a day. When I was awake, I felt dizzy and cold. My body was a resource, and Kaelen was constantly drawing from it. He, in turn, grew stronger. The sickly, pale color of his skin was gone. He was still thin, but the deathly exhaustion in his eyes was replaced by the cold, clear light of an alpha. He was regaining his power, and he was doing it by draining mine. He hated me for it. I could feel it every time he looked at me. I was not his savior. I was his shame. I was the walking, breathing proof that he, the Alpha King, was too weak to survive on his own. He despised me because I was the daughter of his enemy, but he despised me even more because he needed me. He never spoke to me. He would enter the room, check the chain on my wrist, and then sit by the fire, reading reports. His cold silence was a heavy, suffocating blanket. He ordered his healers to see me every day. They would bring me bitter tonics and iron-rich broths. They would check my pulse, my breathing. Their care was not for me. It was for him. They were not healing a patient. They were tending to a battery, making sure it could still hold a charge. She is weak, Alpha, I heard the healer tell Kaelen one afternoon. I was lying on the bed, my eyes closed, too tired to move. The bond is draining her faster than we expected. She must rest. She is in no condition to... She is in the condition I require. Kaelen cut him off, his voice like ice. That is all. He was getting stronger, and with his strength, his arrogance was returning. He had been a dying man, desperate and afraid. Now he was a king again. He strode over to the bed and looked down at me. His gaze was cold, assessing. I am leading the Crimson Hunt in 3 days. It is the full moon. It is the first time I will ride since my brother's death. The pack must see their alpha is strong again. My eyes snapped open. The hunt? I do not understand, Your Majesty. You do not need to understand, he said. He grabbed the silver chain and lifted it, the metal cold against my skin. You are my lifeline, and I do not let my lifeline out of my sight. You will ride with me.
Chapter 9. Lady Seraphina's Warning. The news that I would be joining the Crimson Hunt sent a shock wave of hatred through the fortress. I was the traitor's daughter, the pack's sacrifice, and now I was to be paraded at their most sacred ritual, chained to their king. The day of the hunt, 2 servants came to my room. They did not speak to me. They pulled me from the bed and dressed me in thick, rough leathers. They were practical, but they were also a clear sign of my status, a prisoner. As they were lacing up the heavy boots, the door opened. Lady Seraphina entered. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a cold, dark venom. "So," she hissed, "the little blood bag is going on the hunt." The servants flinched and quickly bowed, scrambling out of the room. We were alone. Seraphina walked slowly around me, her gaze raking over me with pure disgust. "You think you have won, don't you, girl? You saved his life. You think this makes you special." "I did not ask for this," I whispered, my voice trembling. I was so tired. The exhaustion was a constant, heavy weight. "You are a curse," she snarled. "You are the living memory of my murdered nephew. You are the chain that binds my king. He may need you to breathe, but do not ever think he wants you." She stopped in front of me, her face close to mine. "The Crimson Hunt is not a game. It is a ritual of strength. The woods are dark, and the pack is wild. They are angry. They hate what you are. They hate what you have done to their king." Her eyes narrowed, and her voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "You are weak. The bond drains you. If you slow him down, if your weakness causes him to falter, if a single hair on his head is harmed because he is distracted by you, I will kill you myself. Curse or no curse, I will find a way." I shrank back, my heart pounding. This was a direct threat. "Do you understand me, Stray?" I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. "Good," she sneered. "Now go, and try not to die." The horns of the hunt sounded from the courtyard below, a long, mournful cry. It was time.
Chapter 10. A King's Strength. King Julian stood in the doorway of the garden. His face was a mask of stone. His gaze was fixed on the small rolled-up scroll in his beta's hand. "We have the information you wanted," Marcus had said. "We know who the girl is." My heart stopped. I was still standing by the bench. Leela was still holding her father's hand.
Leela,
Julian said, his voice flat and cold. "Go with your guards, now." His daughter, sensing the sudden, dangerous shift in his mood, did not argue. She ran from the garden. Julian looked at me. His face was unreadable. "You," he commanded, his voice sharp, "return to your tower. Do not leave it until I summon you." I flinched, my brief moment of peace shattered. The king was back. I hurried away, my head bowed, my heart pounding with a new, cold dread. He knew my past. He knew I was a traitor's daughter. As I left, I heard Marcus speak again, his voice low. "Alpha, the scroll. It confirms she is the daughter of Beta Silas of this Silver Moon pack, the one who—" The heavy garden door closed, and I did not hear the rest. Julian led Marcus back to his private study. The room was dark and cold. He took the scroll from his beta and unrolled it. He read the words, his jaw tightening. It was all there. Anya, daughter of Silas, executed for treason, fled, lived as a ghost on his border for 12 years. He crushed the scroll in his fist. The daughter of the man who had cost him his brother. She was the one who had saved his child. The irony was a bitter, burning poison. His hatred for her bloodline was at war with the strange, powerful gratitude he felt. But beneath the anger he felt something else. strength. For the first time in years, the crushing weakness of the curse was gone. The bond, this unholy chain to his enemy's daughter, was working. It was pouring her life force into him. He felt powerful. He felt like an alpha again. He turned to Marcus, his gray eyes blazing with a new cold fire. "The moon is in 3 days." Marcus looked surprised. "Yes, Alpha." "Ready the pack for the crimson hunt." Marcus froze, his eyes wide with shock. "My king, you have not led the hunt since your brother's death." "And the pack has grown soft, thinking their king is a dying invalid," he snarled. "They have seen me weak for the last time. I have healed. I will lead the hunt, myself. I will show them all that I am still their king." Marcus bowed, a slow, worried smile on his face. "Yes, Alpha, at once." Kaelen stared out at the dark mountains. He would ride. He would hunt. And the girl, his hated lifeline, would be chained to his side for the entire pack to see. Chapter 11. The Crimson Hunt. The courtyard was a sea of dark fur and tense muscle. The entire Blackwood pack was gathered. Their wolves were restless and wild under the approaching full moon. They stood in a tense, respectful silence. At the front, Alpha Kaelen stood next to a massive black warhorse. He was in his full alpha glory. He looked strong, powerful, his color fully returned. He looked like a king. A smaller, jittery horse was brought for me. A guard locked the long, silver rune chain from my wrist to the thick, iron pommel of Kaelen's saddle. I was physically tethered to him. The pack stared at me. I was a pale, weak, human-looking girl on a horse, chained to their alpha. I was the hated symbol of his weakness. I was the living proof that he could not survive on his own. Their eyes were filled with hatred. I could feel it, a physical, crushing weight. I kept my gaze on the ground. My hands were trembling as I gripped the reins. Kaelen ignored them. He ignored me. He mounted his horse in one fluid, powerful motion. He raised his hand. "Tonight," he roared, his voice booming across the courtyard, "we ride. Tonight we hunt the Crimson Stag. Tonight we show the world that the Blackwood pack is strong, that your alpha is healed." The pack erupted in a deafening howl of loyalty and bloodlust. It was a terrifying, primal sound. Kaelen's horse reared and he spurred it forward. The pack surged after him, a wave of dark, running shadows. My own horse, terrified, bolted to follow. It was yanked forward by the chain. I was thrown back in the saddle. My weak body, still drained by the bond, could barely hold on. We plunged into the dark, wild forest. The hunt was chaos. It was not a hunt. It was a stampede of raw, moon-mad power. Wolves ran through the trees, their forms blurring between man and beast. Shouts and howls echoed in the darkness. My own horse was frantic, trying to keep up with Kaelen's powerful stallion, dragged along by the chain. Branches whipped my face, and my arms ached from the effort of just staying on. Kaelen, in contrast, was a master. He rode with an easy, brutal grace, one hand on the reins, his eyes scanning the forest. He was the predator, the king, in his element. He did not look back at me once. I was just the cargo he was forced to drag along.
Chapter 12. The Shadow Bear. The forest grew darker, thicker. The trees were ancient, their branches like twisted claws against the bright full moon. The pack was in a frenzy, chasing the scent of the crimson stag, a magical beast said to bleed moonlight. I was just trying to survive. I was weak. The constant, draining pull of the fusion bond, combined with the terror of the hunt, made my head spin. I gripped the reins, my knuckles white, my whole body aching with exhaustion. We burst into a small clearing. The pack slowed.
their wolves sniffing the air, confused. The trail had gone cold. Kaelen raised his hand, signaling for a halt. The clearing was silent, except for the panting of the horses and the heavy breathing of the pack. Then I heard it. A low, wet growl that did not come from a wolf. It came from the shadows on the other side of the clearing. Kaelen heard it too. He went still, his body tensing. "Back," he growled to his pack. "Back, now!" But it was too late. A massive, dark shape erupted from the trees. It was not a stag, it was a bear, but larger than any I had ever seen. It was a shadow bear, a creature of nightmare. Its fur was matted with old blood and dirt. Long, yellow claws dripped with poison. But his most terrifying feature was its eyes. One was a milky white, blind. The other was a burning, hateful red. The beast's red eye scanned the pack, passing over the strong warriors, the powerful Alpha. And then it landed on me. It saw the chain. It saw my weakness. It saw the human who did not belong. The bear let out a deafening roar, a sound of pure, ancient malice. It ignored the dozens of warriors. It ignored the Alpha King. It lowered its massive head and charged, its red eye fixed only on me. My horse screamed, rearing in terror. I was thrown from the saddle, landing hard on the cold, rocky ground. The silver chain snapped taut, yanking Kaelen's own horse sideways. I lay there stunned and breathless as the massive, scarred beast thundered toward me.
Chapter 13. The Primal Defense. I was going to die. That was my only thought. I was a stray, a sacrifice, and now I was food for a monster. I tried to scramble backward, my boots finding no purchase on the loose rocks. The shadow bear was almost on top of me, its roar a hot, fetid blast of air. I could see the poison dripping from its claws. No! The roar was not mine. It was Kaelen's. I had never heard a sound like it. It was not the command of a king. It was the raw, guttural, primal fury of a beast protecting its own. A blur of black fur and rage slammed into the side of the shadow bear. Kaelen. He had leaped from his horse and transformed mid-air. His wolf form was magnificent, terrifying. He was huge, larger than any wolf in his pack, his fur as black as the night, his eyes blazing with a cold blue fire. He had thrown himself between me and the bear. He had saved my life. The bear, surprised by the challenge, roared and swiped. Its massive poisoned claws raked across Kaelen's shoulder. He yelped in pain, but he did not back down. He was a true alpha. He was a king defending his what? Me. He was defending me. The pack warriors surged forward, their own wolves answering their alpha's call to battle, but Kaelen snarled, a vicious warning growl. Back. She is mine. His words were not for the bear. They were for his pack. He was claiming the fight. This was his and his alone. I lay on the ground, still chained to his horse, watching in stunned horror. The king, the man who despised me, the man whose life I was forced to sustain, was bleeding for me. His primal instinct to protect his lifeline, his mate, was stronger than his hatred for me. The bear rose on its hind legs, towering over him, and lunged. Kaelen met the charge. The two massive dark forms crashed together in the center of the clearing, a whirlwind of claws, fangs, and roars. The brutal battle had begun.
Chapter 14. The Brutal Battle. The fight was a blur of violence, a clash of two ancient, powerful beasts. The shadow bear was all brute force, its massive, poisoned claws swiping, its jaws snapping. Kaelen was speed, strategy, and pure, cold fury. He was a dervish of black fur, dodging the bear's clumsy lunges, then darting in to rip and tear at its thick hide. The pack watched, silent and awestruck. They had never seen their alpha fight like this. He was not just a king, he was a warrior. Kaelen was faster, but the bear was relentless. It seemed to feel no pain. Kaelen's fangs tore at its shoulder, but the bear simply roared and slammed its massive body into him, sending him flying. He hit the ground hard, rolling, but was on his feet in an instant. I could feel his pain through our bond. It was a sharp, burning agony from the poisoned claws. The bond that was draining my life was now showing me his. Every hit he took, I felt a faint, sickening echo. The bear was focusing on him now, seeing him as the true threat. It lunged again. Kaelen met it, his own claws digging deep. They rolled on the ground, a tangle of black fur and rage. The bear's claws raked down Kaelen's flank. He roared in agony. The poison was strong. It was slowing him down. He was in trouble. The bear sensed his weakness. It rose up, pinning Kaelen's front paws with its immense weight. It opened its massive jaws, ready for the killing bite. "No!" I screamed, my voice raw. I did not know where the strength came from. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the one weapon I could find, a large, sharp rock from the clearing floor. I ran at the beast, my weakness forgotten. "Get off him!" I shrieked. The bear turned its red eye to me, annoyed by the interruption. That 1 second, that one distraction, was all Kaelen needed. With a final explosive roar of pure alpha power, Kaelen surged up from beneath the bear. He was not aiming for its hide. He drove his own head and shoulders deep, his powerful jaws locking on to the bear's thick, unprotected throat.
Chapter 15. The King's Collapse. The shadow bear let out a choked, wet gurgle. Its massive body went rigid with shock. Kaelen held on, his jaws like a steel trap, his own blood mixing with the bear's. The beast thrashed, its claws tearing uselessly at the air, trying to dislodge the alpha. But Kaelen's hold was absolute. He did not let go. He held his grip, his muscles shaking with the effort, the poison burning in his veins. He held on until the bear's struggles grew weaker, until its thrashing slowed, and until, with a final, shuddering sigh, the massive beast collapsed to the ground, dead. Kaelen released his hold and stumbled back. He was covered in blood, his own and the bear's. His black fur was matted. Deep poison gashes ran along his shoulder and flank. He was breathing heavily, his body swaying. "Your Majesty!" Marcus, his beta, cried, rushing forward. Kaelen raised his head. He looked past his beta, past his pack. His burning blue wolf eyes found me. He stared at me for a long, silent moment. He had done it. He had saved me. Then his legs buckled. He fell to the ground, his massive wolf form hitting the earth with a heavy, final thud. He did not move. "Alpha!" the pack screamed, surging forward. "He's not breathing," a warrior shouted. I was yanked forward, the chain on my wrist pulling me off my feet as the pack crowded around him. I fell to my knees beside his still, massive form. Lady Seraphina, his aunt, was there, her face a mask of pale horror. She shrieked, "He is dying! The poison! It's too strong!" The healers pushed through the crowd, but they looked panicked. They had no cure for this. I looked at Kaelen, at the Alpha King who had saved my life. He was dying.
He had saved me, but now he was dying, and I was still chained to him. I was chained to his body, and our bond, our life force, it was still connected. I could feel him. He was cold. He was fading. And I, the girl who was supposed to be his lifeline, could feel my own strength, my own life, being pulled into a cool, dark void along with him.
Chapter 16. The Hated Nurse. The forest clearing was chaos. Kaelen's warriors surrounded their fallen alpha, their howls of grief and fury echoing through the trees. I was yanked hard as I tried to move him, the silver chain on my wrist a brutal reminder that I was tethered to his fate. "He is dying!" Lady Seraphina shrieked, pushing the pack healers aside. She looked at Kaelen's still massive wolf form, and then at me. Her eyes were black with hatred. "This is your fault, you stray! You were the weakness!" She drew a silver knife. "The curse is broken if the payment dies! Cut her free!" "No!" the head healer shouted, grabbing her arm. "Stop, my lady! The fusion bond! If she dies now, he dies instantly! She is the only thing keeping him alive!" Seraphina froze, her face a mask of horrified understanding. She was trapped. To save the king she loved, she had to protect the woman she hated. They did not have the tools to treat his wounds here. They brought a large, flat cart. It took 8 warriors to heave Kaelen's massive wolf form onto it. I was forced to walk beside the cart, chained to my dying enemy, as the grim procession made its way back to the fortress. The pack wolves snarled at me as I passed. I was the traitor's daughter, the bad omen, the stray who had brought their king to the brink of death. They did not take him to his chambers. They took him to the healer's den, a large, cold stone room smelling of herbs and old blood. They laid him on a massive bed of furs, but he did not shift. He remained in his wolf form, his breathing shallow, his body burning with the bear's poison. "He is trapped," the healer whispered, his face pale. "His body is too wounded to shift, and the poison is too strong for his wolf to fight." Seraphina looked at the chain connecting my wrist to his thick, furred leg. "You," she spat at me, "you will stay here. You will not leave this spot. You will keep him alive with your worthless bloodline until we find a cure. If he dies, I will kill you myself." I was left alone, chained to the bed of the dying king, a hated nurse for a man who despised me.
Chapter 17. The Fever. For 3 days, Kaelen did not wake. He was trapped in a deep, poisoned fever. He burned with a heat so intense I could feel it through our bond, a terrible, fiery sickness that left him trembling. His breathing was a low, pained rattle in his massive chest. The healers worked tirelessly. They forced bitter tonics between his fangs and slathered cooling cells on his wounds, but nothing worked. The poison was too deep, too magical. And I was chained to him, a prisoner to his sickness. The bond was a nightmare. It was meant to share my life force, but now it felt like it was sharing his death. My own body ached, my head pounded. I was so weak, so exhausted, I could barely stand. The 10 hours of sleep Seraphina had warned me about was not enough. The curse was draining me, and now Kaelen's fever was burning me. "He needs water," the healer told me on the 3rd night. "He is dying of thirst, but he will not drink for us." I looked at the massive, unconscious wolf. His lips were cracked and dry. I was terrified of him, but the healer was right. I was the only one chained to him. I was the only one who was close. My hands trembled as I dipped a cloth in a bowl of cool water. "Your Majesty?" I whispered, my voice shaking. "Kaelen?" I gently touched the cloth to his hot, dry muzzle. At my touch, his wolf let out a low, pained whine. It was not a growl.
It was a sound of suffering. He instinctively turned his head toward my hand. I squeezed the cloth and a few drops of water fell onto his tongue. He licked them, a weak, reflexive action. I did it again, and again. For an hour, I sat by his head, dripping water, drop by painful drop into his mouth. He was taking it from me. Lady Seraphina watched from the doorway, her face a mask of stone. She saw the beast who had refused all others taking water from the stray. I worked all night. I washed his hot fur with cool cloths. I whispered to him nonsense words, just trying to soothe the pain I could feel pulsing through the bond. "It's okay," I murmured, my own body weak with fatigue. "You are not alone. Just hold on." I was exhausted, slowly dying myself, but I was keeping the king alive with a wet cloth and a soft voice.
Chapter 18. Whispers in the Dark. On the fourth night, the fever became a storm. Kaelen's massive wolf form thrashed on the bed, his legs kicking weakly, his body seized by tremors. He was trapped in a nightmare, his breaths coming as low, agonizing whines. The healers were helpless. "The poison has reached his mind," the head healer whispered to Seraphina. "If the fever does not break by dawn, his wolf will die." And I, chained to his bedside, could only watch. I was so weak I could barely sit up. The bond was a river of pain, pulling Kaelen's agony directly into my body. I felt his fear, his rage, his confusion. I was dying with him. "Please," I whispered, my hand resting on his massive, hot shoulder. "Please, fight. Don't leave me." I was not just pleading for his life. I was pleading for my own. In his delirium, he began to speak, not in growls, but in a low human rasp. "No, not him," he mumbled, his head tossing on the furs. "Brother, don't leave me." I froze. He was grieving. This cold, ruthless king, he was grieving his dead brother, the one my father had killed. "My fault," he whispered, a sound of pure, heartbreaking guilt. "The ambush, I wasn't fast enough. Brother, I'm sorry." My hatred, the cold anger I had held for my jailer, simply evaporated. I was not looking at a monster. I was not looking at a king. I was looking at a man, haunted by a guilt I understood all too well. He, too, was the last of his line. He, too, had lost everything in that border skirmish. My father's mistake had not just cost Kaelen a brother, it had cost him his life. It had cost him everything. Tears streamed down my face. They were not for myself. They were for him. "You're not alone, Kaelen," I whispered, my voice breaking. I leaned my head against his hot fur. I felt his body still. His thrashing stopped. His breathing, which had been so ragged, deepened. He was still unconscious, but he had heard me. My voice, the voice of his enemy, had reached him in the dark. I stayed like that all night, my small, weak body curled against his, my hand on his shoulder. I was his anchor in the nightmare. And as the first pale light of dawn touched the window, I felt the terrible burning heat of his fever finally, truly, begin to fade.
Chapter 19. The Scars of a King. The fever broke, but Kaelen remained unconscious. He had survived the poison, but the battle had taken a terrible toll. His massive wolf form was gone. Sometime in the deep, quiet hours of the morning, he had finally found the strength to shift. He now lay on the bed in his human form. He looked pale, thin, and frighteningly vulnerable. His broad chest was bare, covered only by a thin sheet. The deep, poisoned gashes from the bear's claws were healing, but they were a dark, angry red against his skin. The healers had left, and Lady Seraphina was asleep in a chair. It was just me. I was still chained to the bedpost, still weak, but the fever's echo in my own body had faded. I had a new task. Greta, the housekeeper, brought me a bowl of warm water and clean cloths. The healer said the wounds must be kept clean, she said, her voice softer now, her eyes showing the new, grudging respect. I nodded and pulled my stool closer to the bed. I gently pulled back the sheet to tend to the wounds on his shoulder and flank. But I stopped. My breath caught in my throat. It was not the new wounds that shocked me. It was the old ones. His body was a map of old, terrible pain. I had seen the scars on his face, but his torso? It was covered in them. Thin white, crisscrossing lines. Old puckered circles from silver burns. And across his back, faint rope-like marks that spoke of a past I could not even imagine. This was not just a king. This was a warrior, a survivor. His life had been one of violence and pain. I thought of his whisper in the night, "Brother, I'm sorry." I thought of the cold, hard man who had chained me to his bed. My fingers, acting on their own, gently traced a long, pale scar that ran along his ribs. It was an old, healed wound, but the skin was still rough. He was not a monster. He was a man made of scars. He had built a fortress of stone around his territory and a fortress of ice around his heart, because he knew, better than anyone, how much the world could hurt. I felt a deep, aching pull in my chest. It was not the curse. It was not the bond. It was empathy. It was understanding. My hatred for him, my fear of him, it was all gone. I looked at his face, so still in sleep, the lines of pain eased for now, and I realized, with a terrifying jolt, that I was no longer his prisoner. I was not his nurse. I was falling in love with him.
Chapter 20. A Thaw in the Ice. I spent a week watching him heal. My days were a quiet rhythm of sleeping, eating the broth Greta brought me, and caring for my king. I cleaned his wounds. I forced water between his lips. I watched his chest rise and fall. The bond was still draining me. I was always tired, but the hatred was gone. Now, when I felt my energy seep toward him, it did not feel like a theft. It felt like a gift. I was giving my strength to him. I was healing him. Lady Seraphina watched me. Her cold, hard gaze never left me. She sat in a chair in the corner of the room, silent like a hawk. She saw every gentle touch, every soft word I whispered to him when he was restless. She saw me clean his scars. She saw me tend to him not with the servant's duty, but with a strange, fierce devotion. She still hated me. I was still the daughter of the man who had killed her nephew. But her hatred was now at war with a new, confusing feeling. She was watching me save the only family she had left. One afternoon, I was so tired I could not keep my eyes open. I had been awake for almost 20 hours, watching Kaelen's breathing, which had become shallow again. I slumped in the chair by his bed, my head falling onto the furs, my hand still resting on his arm, near the chain. I fell into a deep, exhausted sleep. I woke with a start. The room was dark. The fire had burned low. Someone had put a thick, warm blanket over my shoulders. I looked up. Lady Seraphina was standing over me. Her face was not hard. It was soft, sad. She said, "He will live," she whispered, her voice rough. I nodded, my throat tight. The healer said,
The poison would have killed him, but your bond, it kept him anchored. Your life force fought for him even while he slept. She looked at me, and I saw tears in her ancient, proud eyes. She said, "You are still the daughter of the man who I hate, Elia. But you have saved my king. You have saved my family. When he wakes, he will not see an enemy. He will see the woman who saved him." She reached out a hand, her fingers trembling, and gently touched my hair. "Rest, child. You have earned it." Her small act of kindness, her words of grudging respect, broke the last of my defenses. The wall between me and the Blackwood pack had finally begun to fall.
Chapter 21. The King Wakes. Kaelen's eyes opened. It was not a slow drift, but a sudden, sharp intake of breath. He was back. His gray eyes, once clouded with fever and poison, were now perfectly clear and sharp. They were the eyes of the Alpha King. He woke to a sight he did not understand. He was in his own healing den, yes, but he was not alone. Chained to his bed, her head resting on the furs near his arm, was the girl, the stray, the traitor's daughter, Elia. She was asleep. Her face, which he remembered as pale and terrified, was now soft and peaceful in her exhaustion. She was thin, her skin almost translucent, dark circles under her eyes, but she was beautiful. His wolf, which had been a cold, silent stone in his chest for years, let out a low, quiet purr. He remembered the hunt, the shadow bear, the searing, endless pain, and then her. He remembered her voice, a small, stubborn anchor in the middle of his nightmare. "I am here. Just hold on." He remembered the feel of her small hand on his fur, a gentle, cooling touch that had kept the poison from consuming him. He had been chained to her to keep him alive, but in the darkness, she had been the one to keep him sane. He looked at the silver rune chain connecting his wrist to hers. It was no longer a symbol of his curse or his prison. It was the link to his savior. Slowly, carefully, he lifted his hand. His body was weak, his muscles ached, but the poison was gone. He reached out, his fingers trembling slightly, and gently brushed a strand of tangled hair from her face. At his touch, her eyes fluttered open. They were wide, confused, and filled with a deep, weary exhaustion. She saw him. She saw he was awake, that he was himself. A small, shaky smile touched her lips. "You're back," she whispered. You stayed," he rasped, his voice rough. "You were chained to me, Your Majesty," she reminded him, softly, her voice weak. "No," Kaelen said, his gaze intense. "You stayed." He looked at this girl, this ghost from his enemy's past. She had been his nurse, his anchor, his lifeline. His hatred for her, his resentment, it was all gone. All that was left was a deep, profound, and terrifying gratitude. He owed his life, his very soul, to the one person in the world he was supposed to despise.
Chapter 22. A Shift in the Bond. The days that followed were strange. Kaelen was awake, and his mind was clear, but he was weak. The battle with the bear and the deep poison had taken a heavy toll. He could not yet stand on his own. He was still the Alpha King, but he was bedridden, and I was still chained to him. But everything was different. The bond between us, the silver rune chain, had changed. Before, it had been a cold, painful link. It was a constant, draining pull on my life. Now it was quiet. The Syrian pain was gone. The silver no longer burned my skin. It rested on my wrist like a simple, heavy bracelet. I could still feel him.
I could feel the new, slow strength returning to his body, and I could feel his gratitude. It was a warm, humming energy that pulsed from his wrist to mine. The bond was no longer a curse. It was a connection. He watched me. He rarely spoke, but his cold gray eyes followed me as I moved around the small 6-foot circle my chain allowed. He watched me as I ate the broth Greta brought. He watched me as I slept, exhausted, in the small cot they had placed just out of his reach. Lady Seraphina was different too. Her hatred for me was gone, replaced by a cold, wary respect. She saw that I had saved him. She still did not like me, but she accepted me. "He needs to heal," she told me, her voice stiff. "He needs to eat. He will not take food from my hand. He is asking for you." I looked at Kaelen. He was staring at me, his face a hard mask, but his eyes were pleading. He was a king. He did not know how to ask for help. My heart gave a strange, painful twist. I took the bowl of stew from Greta. I sat on the edge of his bed. "Your Majesty," I said softly. "Kaelen," he commanded, his voice a low rasp. I blushed. "Kaelen," I tried again, "you must eat." I held the spoon to his lips. He watched me for a long, silent moment. Then slowly, he opened his mouth. He took the food from my hand. I, Elia, the stray, the sacrifice, was feeding the ruthless Alpha King. And in his eyes, I no longer saw a jailer. I saw a man.
Chapter 23. The First Touch. Kaelen healed quickly, as alphas do, but the month he was bedridden changed everything. We lived in that small room, tethered by a 6-foot chain. We were forced to be intimate. I saw him at his weakest. He saw me at my most exhausted. We talked. Not at first, but the silence was too heavy. I would read to him from the books in the healer's den. I would tell him stories from my childhood, stories my father told me. I'd told him about my love for the forest, my skill with herbs. He, in turn, told me about his brother. He spoke of their childhood, of the hunts they had shared. He told me about the deep, terrible guilt he felt over his brother's death. He did not blame my father. He blamed himself. "I was not fast enough," he said, his voice raw. "I was the alpha. I should have protected him." As he spoke, he would watch me, his gaze intense. He was sharing his deepest wounds with me, the daughter of the man who had caused them. One night, the fire had burned low. I was so tired I could barely move, the bond still pulling on my strength. I was sitting on the floor, my back against his bed, my eyes heavy. "You are fading," he said, his voice a low, worried rumble from above me. "I am just tired," I whispered. I was too weak to even get to my cot. I felt him shift. A moment later, his large, warm hand was on my head. His fingers were surprisingly gentle. He slowly stroked my hair. The touch was not possessive. It was not a claim. It was kind. My breath hitched. I leaned into his touch, my eyes closing. It was the first kind, human touch I had felt in 12 years. My father, he was a good man, I whispered, the confession torn from my soul. "He was not a traitor." "I know," Kaelen said, his hand still stroking my hair. "I know that he was not." I looked up at him, my eyes wide. You believe me?" "I see the truth in you, Elia," he said, his voice rough. "I feel your heart.
It is not the heart of a traitor's daughter. He looked at me, his gray eyes filled with a new, raw, and terrifying emotion. The line between our hatred and our healing was gone. All that was left was this strange, deep, and burning connection. He leaned down, and I lifted my face. His lips, warm and soft, met mine. It was not a king's kiss. It was a man's. And it was the first real kiss of my life.
Chapter 24. The Passionate Claim. The kiss was a wildfire. It was everything we had not said for a month. It was his gratitude, his loneliness, his guilt. It was my fear, my anger, my aching, desperate need for kindness. It was the heat of the fever, the shared pain of the bond, all melting into a single burning touch. He pulled me up from the floor, his hands strong on my arms. I was no longer chained to the bed. I was on it, half lying, half kneeling, facing him. He broke the kiss, his breathing ragged, his gray eyes blazing with a dark, silver fire. "Elia!" he breathed, his voice a prayer. He was still weak from his wounds, but his wolf, his alpha spirit, was wide awake, and it was focused entirely on me. This was not the cold, calculating king. This was the primal beast. And the beast knew one thing: mate. He did not force me. He did not command me. He simply looked at me, his eyes asking a silent question, and his hand resting gently on my cheek. And I was no longer the hated, terrified nurse. I was the woman who had saved him. I was the woman who had seen his scars. I was the woman who had, impossibly, fallen in love with him. My hatred was gone. My fear was gone. All that was left was this deep, aching pull. I gave him my answer. I leaned forward and pressed my lips to his again. A soft, trembling kiss that was all the permission he needed. A low, possessive growl rumbled in his chest. He pulled me closer, his mouth devouring mine. His hands moved from my face, down my neck, over my shoulders. His touch was electric. It was everywhere. It was as if he was trying to learn every inch of my skin at once. The rough, simple leathers I wore were a barrier, an insult. His hands went to the laces of my tunic, his fingers fumbling, clumsy with haste, and a desire so strong it was a physical tremor. I helped him, my own hands shaking. The tunic fell away. The cold air of the room hit my skin, but it was instantly replaced by the burning heat of his gaze. He looked at me. He looked at my thin body, my small, pale frame. He did not see a stray. He saw his mate. He saw the woman who had saved him. "You are beautiful," he whispered, his voice thick with a raw, honest awe. He pulled me down onto the furs, his body covering mine. He was heavy, warm, and real. The silver chain that connected us was a cold, forgotten link between our wrists. It was no longer a prison. It was our bond. He kissed my throat, my shoulder, the place where my heart was hammering. Every touch was a brand, a claim, a promise. His hand slid down, over my stomach and lower. I gasped against his lips as his fingers found my center, even through the rough cloth of my trousers. He didn't wait. He tore at the fabric, his need a raw, sharp thing. He freed me from the rest of my clothes, his hot gaze devouring me. He moved between my legs, his own body bare now, his skin covered in the scars I had come to know so well. He was magnificent, a warrior, a king, my king. He looked me in the eyes, his own gaze burning. "You are mine, Elia, mine." I nodded, my breath catching. "I am." He drove into me. It was a single, powerful, claiming thrust. I cried out, a sharp sound of pain and pleasure. He filled me completely, stretching me, branding me as his. He paused, letting me adjust, his forehead pressed against mine, his breathing harsh. Then he began to move. He moved with a deep, pounding rhythm that lit every nerve in my body on fire. The pain faded, replaced with a pleasure so intense it was agonizing. I clung to him, my legs wrapping around his back, meeting his thrusts, our bodies moving together. The bond between us, the one that had only shared pain and weakness, was now a conduit for pure, unadulterated passion. He roared as he found his release, a deep, possessive sound that was not just a climax, but a final, absolute claim. He was the enemy I was sent to. He was the monster who had saved me. And now he was the only man I ever wanted.
Chapter 25. The Pale Queen. The days that followed were a dream. We were no longer jailer and prisoner. We were mates. The bond between us was no longer a curse. It was a river of shared warmth, passion, and a deep, healing peace. Kaelen's strength returned fully. He was the Alpha King again, but the ice in his heart was gone. When he looked at me, his eyes were filled with a fierce, tender love. He unfastened the silver chain from the bed, but he did not unlock it from our wrists. "Not yet," he said, his voice soft. "Not until you are truly mine, in front of the pack." Lady Seraphina, his aunt, was a changed woman. She saw the love in her king's eyes. She saw the new life in his face. She started to treat me like a Luna. She brought me beautiful gowns of dark fur and rich black silk. She taught me the ways of the Blackwood pack. But as Kaelen grew stronger, I did not. The exhaustion, the deep, bone-weary weakness did not go away. I still needed to sleep 10, 12 hours a day. My skin was still pale. My body, which had been healing, felt thin. I ignored it. I was too happy. I was in love. I was finally safe. I was going to be a queen. One morning, Kaelen and I were in the library. He was showing me his family's history, his hand possessively on my back. I was laughing at a story he told when a sudden black wave of dizziness washed over me. The room spun. "Elia?" I heard his voice, sharp with alarm. I stumbled, my legs giving out. I grabbed the table to stop my fall, my vision tunneling to a small, dark point. I'm just tired," I whispered, as the darkness pulled me under. When I woke, I was in our bed. Kaelen was standing by the window, his back to me. He was perfectly still, but the air around him was cold. The ice was back. "Kaelen," I whispered, my voice thick with fear. "What's wrong?" He turned slowly. His face was a mask of pure agonizing horror. It was a look I had never seen before. It was the look of a man who had just had his entire world destroyed. "He spoke to the elders," he said, his voice a dead, flat whisper. "I asked them why you were still so weak, why the bond was still draining you." What did they say?" "They told me the truth," he said. He looked at me, his gray eyes shattered. "The ritual, it didn't fix the curse, Elia. It just transferred it. It gave the curse a new source." He took a shaky breath. "I am not just sharing your life force. I am draining it. I am the burden. I am slowly killing you."
Chapter 26. The King's Horror. I woke up in our bed. Kaelen was sitting in the armchair by the fire, just watching me. The sun was streaming in. I felt a deep, happy warmth in my chest. I had survived. We had survived. "You're staring," I said, my voice soft and sleepy. I smiled at him. Kaelen did not smile back. His face was a mask of pure, agonizing horror. He looked pale, sicker than when he was dying. The man who had kissed me with such passion was gone. In his place was a cold, terrified stranger. "Kaelen?" I asked, sitting up. The warmth in my chest turned to ice. "What is it? What's wrong?" He stood up, but he did not move toward me. He took a step away from me. He looked at me as if I were a ghost. "Elia," he whispered, and his voice was a broken, raw sound. "What have I done?" "I don't understand," I said, my heart starting to pound with a new, strange fear. "Your weakness," he said, his voice shaking. I thought it was just the ritual. I thought it would fade." He looked at his own hands, his strong, healed hands. Then he looked at me, at my pale skin, at the dark circles under my eyes that never seemed to go away. "I am the curse, Elia," he choked out, his eyes filling with a terrible, agonizing guilt. "The ritual did not fix the blood debt. It transferred it. It gave the curse a new source. Me." He was breathing hard, his control shattering. "I am not sharing your life force," he whispered, his eyes wide with self-hatred. "I am draining you. I am a parasite. I am slowly killing you." The truth hit me. My constant, crushing exhaustion, my need for 10 hours of sleep, my pale skin. It was not the aftermath of the ritual. It was the ritual itself. He was my lifeline, but I was his, and he was draining me dry. He saw the understanding in my eyes. He could not bear it. He turned and strode from the room, slamming the heavy door behind him, leaving me alone with the horrifying final truth.
Chapter 27. The Truth of the Ritual. I sat in the cold, silent room. He was killing me. The man I had fallen in love with, the man who had held me, the man who had kissed me with such passion, he was my executioner. I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. It was not a shock. It was an answer. It explained the weakness. It explained the constant, crushing fatigue. I was a candle, and he was the flame, and I was burning away. The door opened. It was not Kaelen. It was Lady Seraphina, his aunt. Her face was no longer hard or hateful. She looked old and very, very tired. She looked at me with a deep, profound pity. "He knows," I whispered. She nodded, walking into the room. He is not taking it well. He has locked himself in the library. He will not speak to anyone." "Did you know?" I asked, my voice flat. "Did you know this would happen?" Seraphina sat down on the stool, her hands twisting in her lap. "The healers, they warned him," she admitted, her voice low. "They said the ritual was forbidden. They said it was a dark, selfish magic. It does not create life. It only moves it." She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. He was dying, Elia. He was desperate. He did not want to hear them. He wanted to live. I thought of the strong, vital man who had fought the bear, the man who had held me. "He is so strong now," I said, my voice hollow. "He is strong," Seraphina agreed, "because you are weak. The bond is a constant open drain. He is taking your life, piece by piece, to fuel his own. That is the nature of the ritual. That is the price of the curse." "So what happens now? Do I just fade away? Do I die so he can live?" Seraphina looked at me, her gaze full of a new, terrible sorrow. "Yes," she whispered. "Unless a true cure for the original blood debt can be found, you will die. The healers give you
Perhaps a year. Maybe less. A year. I had survived my pack's rejection, the hunters, and a shadow bear, only to be given a death sentence by the man I loved?
Chapter 28. The New Heir. A week passed. Kaelen did not return to the tower. He had moved his rooms. He could not bear to be near me. He could not bear to touch me, knowing that every moment he was close, he was draining my life. He sent me gifts. Fine silks, rare books, exotic fruits. They were apologies. They were guilt. They were the offerings of a man trying to make his sacrifice comfortable. I was alone. I was weaker than ever. The exhaustion was a heavy, wet blanket I could not throw off. I spent my days sleeping, my body struggling to produce enough life force for both of us. One morning, I was trying to eat the rich breakfast Greta had brought me when a wave of nausea, sudden and violent, washed over me. I dropped the spoon and ran to the washroom, my body heaving. This was new. It was not the familiar dizziness of the bond. This was different. Later that day, the pack healer, Martin, came to see me. He had been ordered by the king to check on me. He looked at my pale face, my trembling hands. He took my pulse. He frowned. "My Luna," he said, his voice hesitant. "You are very weak. The bond is taking a heavy toll." "I know," I whispered. "I am just tired." "No," Martin said, his face serious. "It is more than that. Your body, it is under a new, different kind of strain." He looked at me, his eyes full of a strange, new awe. "My Luna, are you aware that you are pregnant?" The room spun. Pregnant. I was carrying a child. Kaelen's child. The night of our passion, the night the bond had changed, it had created a new life. A new, tiny life that was now also drawing on my strength. I was a candle burning at 3 wicks. One for me, one for the king I loved, and one for our unborn child. The healer saw the terror in my eyes. "He must tell the king," he said, bowing. "But wait," I cried. But he was already gone, running to his Alpha with the impossible news. Kaelen burst into the room moments later. He had not seen me in a week. His face was a mask of pure, agonizing horror. He knew. "Is it true?" he whispered, his voice shaking. I could only nod, tears welling in my eyes. "I am pregnant, Kaelen." He looked at me, at my pale, weak form. He looked at my stomach, and his face, the face of the ruthless Alpha King, crumbled. He fell to his knees, his head in his hands. "What have I done? I have killed her. I have killed them both."
Chapter 29. The Vow. I watched him. The most powerful wolf in the world was kneeling on my floor, his body shaking with deep, agonizing sobs. He was shattered. The warrior who had faced a shadow bear, the king who had ruled with an iron fist, was broken by this. He was broken by his own guilt. The ice around my own heart, the fear, the anger, it melted. He was not a monster. He was my mate, and he was in pain. I slid from the bed, my legs weak. I knelt in front of him, my movements slow. I took his hands and pulled them away from his face. He was weeping. His face was wet with tears. "Kaelen," I said, my voice soft but firm. "Look at me." He raised his head, his gray eyes blurred with a pain that matched my own. "I did this. I was so selfish. I only wanted to live. I have killed you, Elia. I have killed our child." "No," I said, my voice gaining strength. I put my hand on his cheek, forcing him to look at me. "We are not dead yet. I am still here. Our child is still here. We are fighting." He stared at me, his mind slowly catching up to my words. He saw the strength in my eyes. He saw that I was not giving up. You do not hate me?" he asked, his voice thick.
I could never hate you. You are my mate, but you are also a fool. You think this is over? You think we are just going to fade away? A new, strange, fierce energy was filling me. It was not just my life force. It was a mother's rage. It was a Luna's strength. You are the Alpha King, I said, my voice hard. You saved me from a beast. You were not going to let a curse defeat you. You were not going to let it take your family. Kaelen's breathing hitched. He looked at me, truly looked at me. He saw the strength in my eyes. He saw that I was not giving up. My strength was flowing into him, not just through the bond, but through my will. His despair began to fade. It was replaced by a new, slow-burning fire, a desperate, protective resolve. He had only wanted to live before, but now he had something to live for. He stood up, pulling me with him. He held me close, his arms a steel cage round me. You are right, he vowed, his voice a low, rough growl. I started this by trying to save myself. I will end it by saving you.
Chapter 30. The search begins. The fortress was no longer a quiet, healing den. It was the heart of a kingdom at war. Kaelen was a changed man. The cold, grieving king was gone. He was replaced by a focused, energized alpha on a hunt. He was not hunting a beast. He was hunting a cure. He spent his days and nights in the great library. He was surrounded by his oldest, wisest elders. He had summoned pack scholars from all territories. The tables were covered in ancient, crumbling scrolls and heavy, leather-bound books. They were not looking for a way to manage the curse. They were looking for a way to break it. I was always by his side. My body was weak. I spent most of my time resting on a soft couch the guards had moved into the library for me. But my mind was sharp. I was his partner. I read the ancient texts with him. I helped him look for the loophole, the lost ritual, the one piece of magic that could sever the original blood debt forever. Lady Seraphina was our most loyal soldier. Her hatred for me was gone, replaced by a fierce, protective love. She guarded me like a hawk. She brewed me strengthening tonics and forced me to eat, her new purpose to keep me and the heir alive. Our love, Kaelen's and mine, was a quiet, desperate thing. It was forged in the shadow of a ticking clock. Every night he would leave the scrolls and come to me. He would hold me, his hand resting protectively over my stomach, where our child was growing. We both knew we were in a race against time. The bond that kept him strong was the same bond that was making me weak. And the baby was a new, precious drain on my fading strength. One night, Kaelen found something. It was a small, torn piece of a scroll hidden inside an old healer's book. It was a map. It did not lead to a place. It led to a person, a hermit, a seer, an ancient wolf who lived in the frozen wastes of the north. A wolf who, the text hinted, knew how to break the oldest curses. Kaelen looked at me, his gray eyes blazing with a new, dangerous hope. He had a target. He had a path. He kissed me, a long, deep promise. I will be back, he vowed. He embraced me, his hand on my stomach, his heart full of a desperate, protective love. He had to save the woman who had saved him. He had to save the child they had created. He turned and strode from the room, his black cloak billowing, his purpose clear. His search for the cure continues.